Welcome to Cyber Bytes, your weekly dose in the latest in cybersecurity news. I'm your host, Edwin Kwan, and today's stories include the ACSC issuing its second warning in 2 months about active exploitation of known CMS vulnerabilities, an open source Linux distribution that's recovering from an insider sabotage attempt, a geopolitical tension that is spilling into developer tooling, with China raising concerns about data collection in Anthropic's Claude Code, and a highly targeted phishing campaign that is using legitimate SaaS platforms to harvest Gmail credentials. Let's get started. Starting locally, the ACSC's latest advisory makes it clear that large-scale exploitation of content management systems is not slowing down. In many cases, it is accelerating. The alert identifies 17 vulnerabilities across widely used platforms, including WordPress plugins, Craft CMS, Joomla's JCE editors, and others. What stands out is not the existence of these vulnerabilities, but the fact that patches have been available for most of them for months. And despite that, attackers are still finding success, particularly against small to medium-sized Australian organizations. This aligns with broader industry data from the Verizon's 2026 Data Breach Investigation Report, which found that the exploitation of known vulnerabilities remain one of the top initial access vectors, particularly in organizations without mature patching processes. The ACSC is also highlighting the operational reality here. Compromised websites are not just a business risk, they are also being actively weaponized. In a recent campaign, Australian WordPress sites were used to deliver malware, effectively turning trusted local businesses into distribution points for credential theft. Now, what makes this more concerning is the persistence attackers achieve once they've gained access. The ACSC is explicitly advising organizations to look for web shells and malicious scripts, which are lightweight pieces of code that allow ongoing remote control of a compromised server. Organizations need to assume that exploitation may have already occurred and move into detection and remediation. There is also a clear message around shared responsibility. Many of these CMS deployments sit on managed hosting platforms, and yet visibility into patching and monitoring often stops at the provider boundary. The ACSC is telling organizations to challenge that assumption and actively verify how their providers are handling active exploitation. This is a governance issue as much as a technical one, and this is where many small organizations are still exposed. Shifting from external threats to internal risks, the Open Mandriva incident is a useful case study in how insider access can quickly become a security issue when relationships break down. In this case, a former contributor used admin privileges to delete repositories and push malicious or disruptive changes into the project's development pipeline. The impact was pretty bad. Entire repositories built over nearly a decade were removed, and an empty package was introduced that effectively disrupted key desktop environments. While this did not translate to a widespread end-user compromise, it could easily have been. Open source projects operate on trust, and that trust is often enforced through access controls that are far less formal than those in enterprise environments. The lesson here is that insider risk is not limited to malicious employees in corporate settings. It extends to any environment where individuals are granted elevated privileges, including open source ecosystems that underpin a significant portion of modern software supply chains. Now, on to our third story, and this sits at the intersection of cybersecurity and geopolitics. China's National Vulnerability Database has issued a warning about specific versions of Anthropic's Claude Code, alleging that the tool contains mechanisms capable of collecting user data and transmitting it externally. The claim centers on what appears to be an anti-distillation feature designed to prevent other AI models from training on Claude's outputs. Anthropic has acknowledged experimenting with these controls and has since removed the mechanisms in a later version. However, the lack of transparency around how these features were implemented and disclosed is driving concern, particularly in environments where data sovereignty is tightly regulated. This is not just about one tool or one vendor. It reflects a broader shift where developer toolings, particularly AI-assisted tooling, is becoming part of the attack surface. These tools often have deep access to source code, development workflows, and sometimes even production environments. That makes them high-value targets and also high-risk dependencies if not properly governed. We are already seeing organizations introduce stricter controls around which AI tools can be used in development environments, including network monitoring, access restriction, and approval process. The situation with Claude Code and the response from Chinese authorities shows that these decisions are increasingly influenced by geopolitical considerations as well as technical risks. Now, on to our last stories, which is a phishing campaign that's targeting Gmail users, and it shows how far social engineering has evolved. The operation is notable for its level of personalization and its use of legitimate platforms to build credibility. Attackers are sending emails through PeopleForce, which is a real HR platform, then chaining redirects through Salesforce Marketing Cloud and other services before landing victims on the phishing page. By the time the user is prompted to log in, the journey has passed through multiple trust domains, significantly reducing the likelihood of detection by both users and security tools. The use of a browser-in-the-browser technique adds another layer of deception. This approach creates a fake login pop-up that closely mimics a legitimate Google sign-in window, making it difficult for users to distinguish from a real authenticated flow. Combined with targeted reconnaissance, where victims are selected and addressed based on their professional background, this campaign reflects a shift towards higher effort, higher success phishing operations. Google's own threat analysis has consistently shown that credential phishing remains one of the most effective attack methods, particularly when combined with session hijacking techniques that bypasses multi-factor authentication. Now, this reinforces the need to move beyond user awareness training alone, and we need to implement controls such as phishing-resistant authentication, domain monitoring, and anomaly detection for login behavior. Across all these stories today, the common thread is that trust is being exploited at multiple layers, whether it is trust in patching processes, trust in contributors, trust in developer tools, or trust in familiar brands and platforms. Attackers are consistently finding ways to operate within those boundaries rather than breaking them outright. The response is not a single control or technology, but a more deliberate approach to validating that trust. That means tightening patch management, reviewing access controls, scrutinizing third-party tools, and assuming that even legitimate platforms can be part of an attack chain. I'm Edwin Kwan. This is Cyber Bytes. I'll see you next week.